On a hill in Washington, D.C., stands a university that changed Black America forever. We are talking about Howard University, the place everyone calls the Mecca. It is where Thurgood Marshall studied before taking on segregation, where Chadwick Boseman found his voice, and where Kamala Harris walked across the yard long before the White House. For more than 150 years, this campus has shaped history, culture, and power. But how did it become the most famous HBCU in the world? The year was 1866. The Civil War had just ended. Slavery had been abolished, and millions of freed men and women were trying to build lives from scratch. But freedom without education was like being handed a key with no door to open. That's when a group of 10 visionaries decided to create something extraordinary. One of them was a Union general named Oliver Otis Howard, and they decided to build an institution. Their plan was to train teachers and preachers who could guide the newly freed Black generation. They called it the Howard Normal and Theological Institute for the Education of Teachers and Preachers. A long name, yes, but a great mission. On March 2nd, 1867, that dream became official when Congress signed the charter for Howard University. It started small. There were just a few buildings on 3 acres of land in D.C. This included the first main building, a dormitory called Minor Hall, a small medical building, and a hospital for freed slaves. Even General Howard's personal home, Howard Hall, became part of the campus. He later moved out so students could use it for learning. That's how committed he was. Today, it's the only original building still standing. From day one, Howard was different. It opened its doors to everyone, including Black, white, male, and female. In fact, the first group of students included 5 white women, the daughters of the school's board members. Imagine that in 1867. The founders were building a new model for equality. It was risky, radical, and completely unheard of at the time. By the fall of 1867, the campus was full of activity. The school was preparing the students not only for jobs, but to lead. The focus was on teaching, ministry, medicine, and law, the 4 pillars that would rebuild a broken society. Freedmen's Hospital became a training ground for future doctors. The classrooms were filled with energy, faith, and determination. These students were learning how to change the world that had refused to see them as equals. As the years went on, the university grew fast. More land, more buildings, more departments. The first chapel was named Andrew Rankin Chapel, and it was built in 1894. In fact, it still stands as one of Howard's most iconic landmarks. It became the heart of the campus, a place where students of all faiths could gather, pray, debate, and dream. And trust me, they did plenty of dreaming. By the early 1900s, Howard was already being noticed across the country. Students and faculty began calling it something special, a name that would stick forever, the Mecca. One of the earliest known mentions came from a student writer in 1909 who described Howard as the Mecca toward which the eyes of our youth will instinctively turn. That was pure prophecy. Howard sat on a hill overlooking the U.S. Capitol, and it became a beacon for young Black men and women who wanted more out of life. Washington, D.C. itself was called the Mecca of the American Negro at the time, but Howard stood right at its center, a place that didn't just educate Black people, but celebrated them. Then came the 1920s, and Howard's transformation began. In 1926, a new leader took over. It was a young Baptist minister named Dr. Mordecai Wyatt Johnson. He would become Howard's first Black president, and under him, the university exploded with growth. At that time, only one of Howard's schools was accredited. When Johnson left 34 years later, all of them were. That's the kind of turnaround you call history. He raised millions of dollars, built new departments, and recruited some of the sharpest Black scholars in America. Howard was no longer just a college, it was a movement. Johnson also pushed for higher academic standards, research opportunities, and even new PhD programs. In 1955, Howard awarded its first doctorate in chemistry. It was a huge step for any Black institution in America. By the time the university celebrated its 100th anniversary in 1967, it had already done what few thought possible. It had trained over 30,000 graduates, including half of the Black doctors and dentists in the entire country. Imagine that. One school producing that much talent, that much impact. Howard's graduates were leading hospitals, running courtrooms, and teaching in universities nationwide. From a few wooden buildings and a handful of students, Howard had become a national symbol of progress. Even back then, the founders' motto was still alive: Veritas et Utilitas, truth and service. That's not just words on a seal. It became a promise that no matter how big Howard got, it would always serve the people who needed it most. By the 1930s, Howard University was thriving. Under President Mordecai Johnson, the campus turned into a hub of ideas, politics, and power. Students were debating in classrooms one day and protesting in the streets the next. Professors were publishing research that reached Congress. The atmosphere was electric. It was part college, part command center for a changing America. At the center of it all was Howard Law School. This law school was led by Charles Hamilton Houston, and he helped the law faculty rewrite the playbook on civil rights. Houston believed that segregation couldn't just be protested. It had to be destroyed in court, and that's exactly what he trained his students to do. One of them was Thurgood Marshall, who would go on to become the first Black Supreme Court justice. Together, they built the legal foundation for Brown versus Board of Education, the case that ended school segregation in 1954. That victory started here, inside Howard's moot courtroom. While the law school was taking on injustice, Howard's medical and dental schools were building an entire generation of Black healthcare professionals. By the 1960s, more than half of all Black doctors and dentists in the country had trained at Howard. That's quite impressive. Science was another strength. Howard students were working in state-of-the-art labs with tools like subcritical nuclear reactors and electron microscopes decades ago. They were experimenting, innovating, and leading research that few other HBCUs could match. Then came the arts, and Howard became a cultural force. The College of Fine Arts grew into one of the most creative parts of the university. In 1949, the Howard Players, a student theater group, toured Europe and performed in Germany, Denmark, and Sweden to packed audiences. They came back with the Silver Anvil Award. It was the first ever given to a student theater group. The Howard University Choir also made history. Critics called them one of the best choirs in the world, and during a 1960 tour in Latin America, they won major awards for representing American culture. By then, Howard had turned into much more than a school. It became the center of Black culture and pride. Writers, actors, scientists, and activists all came through its doors. Zora Neale Hurston, who is one of the great Harlem Renaissance writers, helped start The Hilltop, the campus newspaper that still runs today. Years later, stars like Chadwick Boseman, Felicia Rashad, Debbie Allen, and Taraji P. Henson carried that same creative energy into Hollywood. And then there was Howard Homecoming, the event everyone talked about. It was not just a football game. It was a week of music, fashion, and unity. For graduates, it was a homecoming in every sense of the word. For everyone else, it was proof that Black excellence had a heartbeat, and it was right there on the yard. During the 1970s and 80s, under President James E. Cheek, Howard grew faster than ever. The campus expanded with a new hospital, a college of dentistry, a modern library, and the Blackburn Center, a student hub for events and culture. Howard even launched WHUR Radio and its own television station, giving students a platform to shape their own stories and voices. The funding increased, and so did the university's national influence. Howard became a place where world leaders came to speak, and movements were born. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and other major figures all spoke on campus. Every decade, new generations of students carried the same mission: to lead, to speak up, and to serve. Walk across the yard, and you could feel it. Students were organizing protests, leading community programs, and setting trends that reached far beyond D.C. By the end of the century, Howard's legacy spoke for itself. It had produced more Black PhDs than any other university. Its graduates included lawyers who changed the law, doctors who built hospitals, and artists who shaped culture. But beyond the numbers and achievements was something even stronger: a belief that education could set people free. That's why Howard became known as the Mecca, because for countless students it was home, purpose, and possibility all in one. Today, Howard University is one of the most powerful symbols of progress in Black America. What began as a small post-war school has become a global center for education, research, and culture. The campus now stretches across multiple sites in Washington, D.C., with more than 12,000 students studying in 12 schools and colleges. Howard offers over 120 programs, from business and medicine to fine arts and engineering. Science and technology have become the new frontier. In 2023, Howard made history by signing a $90 million contract with the U.S. Department of Defense, becoming the first HBCU to lead a military research center. The project focuses on advanced technologies like artificial intelligence, robotics, and cybersecurity. These are fields that were once far out of reach for Black scholars. Now, Howard is leading the way. The same ambition runs through the university's growing focus on R1 research status, the highest classification for research activity in the United States. New labs, grants, and doctoral programs are driving Howard toward that goal. Its current president is Dr. Ben Vinson III. Under his leadership, the university is expanding digital archives, strengthening global partnerships, and investing in many innovative fields. But Howard's impact goes beyond academics. It shaped the way Black America sees itself. From Kamala Harris in the White House to Chadwick Boseman on the movie screen, Howard's influence lives everywhere. Its graduates are lawmakers, scientists, journalists, and artists shaping national conversations. Every success story circles back to the same place, the Hill in D.C. where it all began. Howard's story is living proof that HBCUs are engines that built Black America from the ground up. But the truth is, not everything you have heard about HBCUS is true. Some of it's wrong, outdated, or straight up misleading. So before you make up your mind, watch our next video to find out the truth. You will never look at these schools the same way again.